Oh! Oh, why hello there. Today you find me in an unusual location, the spacious rear cargo area of a two-door, two-seater sports car. See, today we're celebrating a rare car, both physically and thematically. It's the BMW Z3 M Coupe. We're here in Spartanburg, South Carolina, the home of this car. Let's check it out.
Is that trunk open?
Hell yeah, dude.
You may be looking at this car right now thinking, hey, sports cars are supposed to have beautiful, flowing bodies. This thing looks like someone just stuck a box on the back of a Z3 Roadster. Looks like it was made as cheaply as possible. Well, you'd be right. This is not a stylist's project. This is an engineer's car, made to be good to drive and easy to make. And anything else, styling included, wasn't really on the priorities list. So welcome to the Z3 M Coupe. Now, there's a reason why this car looks this way. Two-seater sports car, but it's got a big hatchback in the rear, which means not only is it very practical, but also has a lot of commonality with a regular Z3 Roadster. The legend of the Z3 M Coupe is that it was really done by a sort of skunk works team within BMW, led by a man named Burkhard Guschel. Now, Guschel was the man who was in charge of the Z3 project altogether. But when he started working on it, he also squired away a prototype to make a better driving version of the car, which was really mostly meant to be a kind of retro roadster. Again, remember, Burkhard started working on the car in 91 or 92, depending on who you ask, which is right after the Miata comes out. So the Miata comes out, tells the whole world that you can make a retro, rear drive, front engine sports car, and BMW is like, great, we'll do that. We've made rear drive sports cars before, we'll do it again, and this time we'll make a bunch of money. But for Burkhard, that wasn't enough. He wanted a car that was not just sort of fun to look at, but also good to drive. And to be good to drive, you want something which was rigid and stiff. And to be rigid and stiff, you don't want a roadster with no roof. You want a coupe. But the problem was, Burkhard didn't yet have approval to make a coupe of the Z3. So he developed it in secret, working on it sort of nights and weekends with his other handful of engineers. And knowing that they hadn't yet gotten approval from BMW to do it, they were focused on making it as cheap to produce as possible, so that a limited production coupe, something that was, maybe not the most mass market car, they could still afford to do it. Whoa. So, there's a funny little bit of cost saving in this car, which you really only get to see when you compare it to a non-M version of the coupe. And this is also a very rare car. There are only like 7,700 of these things made versus 6,300 of these things. Now, looking at the M version, you've got these extra wide fenders with these wide 17-inch wheels. There's also a limited slip diff in the back there. Of course, this is 300 odd horsepower in a tiny little rear drive car. You want as much rear tire as you can get away with. Now, if there was a Roadster, a non-M version, wouldn't have such big tires, it wouldn't have as much power, and it wouldn't have as big a fender to cover it. But on the coupe, this is not the case. Come look at the rear fender on this one. Even on the non-M, it's still extra wide. Now, it doesn't need to be this big because it doesn't have that much power. This is only a 2.8 liter Euro model. But it saves BMW money only having one stamping for both the M and the non-M version of the coupe. So it's like a funny bit of rationality in a kind of lunatic car.
All of this cost-efficient design was great for getting the thing approved and for making it go fast. It's actually a very aerodynamic shape. But it's notoriously one of the ugliest cars of the modern era. When it was first shown to an executive for approval, the guy didn't even have words, just stood there, silent. Fans have given it the affectionate nickname, the clown shoe. Now, it is ugly, but it's got something special about it.
So there is a lot of direct charm, to me personally, of an ugly car. In that it's an instant signifier to those who know that there's a reason why you're buying it beyond or in spite of how it looks. This is the car that BMW enthusiasts really freak out about. But the first thing that seems really funky about it is that it still feels like halfway rooted in old BMW stuff. The window switches are the same sort of as you'd find on an E30 or something, right here in the middle of the car. And it feels just so small and tiny. It really feels like something a lot older. The engine is so good. It's so creamy, so smooth. It's a really well-known engine. It's a straight six, 3.2 liters, so it's like a pretty big size for a European straight six, but not a huge engine altogether. So it's very well balanced. It's meant to be smooth. It's also why the hood is so obnoxiously long. But that sound is what you want. Individual throttle bodies in the engine. So it's got 6 little flaps, one breathing in for each individual cylinder, which gives you that very direct response. And it's also a BMW, so it's got that very raspy sound, which some people hate, and I just love. All right, so I talk about the Z3 M Coupe as a kind of special car, but what kind of car is it exactly? In terms of specs, this one is a very interesting one. In this case, it had about 315 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. It revved up to 7,600 RPM. It really revved up to 7,600 RPM and easily, because it's just a 3.2 liter straight six, but it's got individual throttle bodies. So that means it's got 6 little intake trumpets breathing in individually to each cylinder. Makes it very responsive. What's also interesting about this, in addition to the engine, is the chassis itself. Now, this is a really kind of simple car in how it's built. Something like a Supra of the same time would have a double wishbone front suspension. In this, it's just a McPherson strut, which is pretty simple, sort of 1960s technology. And the back, it's a semi-trailing arm, which I think is just, there's a big lever, which just sort of, I think, holds the back of the, holds each wheel up. Kind of simple stuff, but it works really well. In the case of the M version, as opposed to a non-M, you get about an inch lower ride height, you get a wider front track, wider rear track, different front suspension geometry, stiffer springs, stiffer shocks, a reinforced subframe in the back, which BMW nerds will really appreciate, stronger semi-trailing arms in the back, and thicker anti-roll bars all around. In making this car a coupe rather than a roadster, it's about 2.6 times stiffer, and the top speed is supposedly 170 miles an hour according to owners, though that's really just what the top of the Speedo says, so I don't know exactly if I'm supposed to believe them. Weight was, I think, either 3,000 pounds or 3,100 pounds, somewhere in between there, making it a couple hundred pounds lighter than the M3 of the day, even though it was a little bit down on power and revs. Very, very special car. And this one in particular is way, way rarer than you think it is. So they only made about 6,300 M Coupes altogether. Now, for the American market, they only made about 2,200 of the early ones with the earlier motor. But when it came to the later motors, and this is just going off of what BMW registry says, there were only 678 M Coupes with this engine and this spec sent to the United States whatsoever. So this is a crazy rare car for me to just be leaning up against in my sweatshirt in the grass. Cool, huh? Wondering if all this work was worth it. If Gerschel's pet project actually made it through to production. Not just in physical form, but also in spirit of making something that was not only good to sort of produce for BMW, but to really drive. Yes, absolutely, he did it. So the thing about this car, it's a reminder that no matter how much the car industry seems that it's perpetually run by just profits, just the most boring possible things, there's an irrationality to it too. That at the heart of these companies are enthusiasts. They're drivers. And periodically they just can't help themselves but produce something that they'll enjoy. Even if it looks super weird to all the normals driving their cars.